On a spring morning in 1943, a Spanish fisherman pulled a body from the surf near Huelva. British officer, full uniform, a leather briefcase chained to his wrist. The Spanish authorities took the body. Within hours, German intelligence had the briefcase. Within days, Berlin had photographs of every document inside. Within weeks, Adolf Hitler had personally read those documents and moved his armoured divisions away from the one island the Allies were actually planning to invade. The dead man's name was Major William Martin. He had a fiancée. He had debts. He had theatre ticket stubs still in his pocket. He had never existed. The man in that uniform had died alone on the streets of London months earlier. He had been dressed, documented, and dropped into the sea with a single purpose: to carry a lie directly into the hands of the most paranoid military intelligence apparatus in the world. And that lie worked. It worked so completely that it changed the outcome of the invasion of Sicily, triggered the fall of Mussolini, and helped fracture the entire Axis alliance. This is how a dead man fooled Hitler, and how a homeless Welshman nobody remembered became one of the most important figures of the Second World War. By early 1943, the war in North Africa was over. The last German and Italian forces surrendered in May. The Allies now held the strategic momentum, and every serious military planner knew where the next blow had to fall. Sicily. The island sat 90 miles from the Tunisian coast, at the centre of the Mediterranean. Capturing it would open the route into mainland Italy and force Germany to split its forces across two fronts. General Eisenhower and British General Harold Alexander were already deep in planning Operation Husky, the Allied invasion of Sicily, set for July 10, 1943. Germany knew Sicily was the logical target. Hitler had said so himself. The Wehrmacht had 2 divisions stationed on the island, and the capability to reinforce quickly. If German armour was waiting on those beaches when Allied landing craft hit the shore, the invasion could collapse into a bloodbath. The Allies needed Germany looking somewhere else. British intelligence had been running deception operations for years, but nothing on this scale had ever been attempted. This wasn't a planted rumour or a forged radio signal. This had to be a lie so deep, so human, so forensically convincing that trained German analysts, men who doubted everything, would bring it to Hitler and call it real. In naval intelligence in London, an officer named Ewan Montague had been sitting with an idea that had started as a single line in a memo by a man named Ian Fleming, the same Fleming who would later create James Bond. Fleming had sketched the concept: plant false documents on a dead body and let the enemy find it. Montague didn't file it away. He partnered with Royal Air Force officer Charles Cholmondeley, and together they began building what would become Operation Mincemeat. The first problem was the body. It couldn't be just any corpse. It needed to pass examination by Spanish military doctors and, through the photographs German intelligence would inevitably obtain, by professional analysts in Berlin. The right age, the right physical type for a British officer, cause of death consistent with drowning, and most critically, a man no one would report missing. In January 1943, Montague found him. His name was Glyndwr Michael, 34 years old, Welsh, a labourer who had drifted to London before the war, homeless and mentally ill, with no family and no one searching for him. He was found unconscious in an abandoned King's Cross warehouse and died in St Pancras Hospital on January 28, 1943. The cause? Phosphorus poisoning from rat poison he had almost certainly consumed accidentally, scavenging food from a contaminated area. The attending physician noted something important. Phosphorus poisoning produces pulmonary damage that, under the right conditions, could be difficult to distinguish from the internal effects of drowning. Montague quietly arranged custody of the remains. Glyndwr Michael was sealed in a metal canister packed with dry ice. He would stay there for 3 months while 2 British officers built a complete human being around him. They didn't dress a corpse in a uniform. They built a life. Because they knew the Germans would look for cracks, and one inconsistency, a serial number that didn't match, a letter with the wrong emotional register, would destroy everything. Glyndwr Michael became Major William Martin, acting rank, Royal Marines, service number 148228, assigned to Combined Operations Headquarters under Admiral Lord Mountbatten. Acting rank was chosen deliberately. It was recorded with less administrative precision than permanent rank, making any German attempt to verify his file far more difficult. His pockets became his biography. Theatre ticket stubs, 2 seats, St. James's Theatre, West End, late April. A receipt from his naval outfitters. A book of stamps, partially used. An overdraft warning from Lloyd's Bank. A letter from his father, proud but stiff, the way men of that generation wrote to sons they couldn't quite reach. And then there was Pam. Her photograph showed a young, dark-haired woman, in reality, an MI5 clerk who had agreed to be photographed. 2 handwritten letters from her were placed in the briefcase. They were written slowly, over days, by intelligence officers who understood exactly what genuine love letters sounded like. Warm, specific. One mentioned they had looked at rings together before he shipped out. She hadn't pushed. She simply hoped. German analysts later studied those letters for hours. They found nothing suspicious. The centerpiece of the operation was a letter bearing the official seal of the War Office, signed by Lieutenant General Sir Archibald Nye, Vice Chief of the Imperial General Staff, addressed personally to General Alexander in North Africa. The letter was crafted over weeks and reviewed at the highest levels of British intelligence. It didn't announce false information. It implied it the way a confident man implies things when he believes no enemy is listening. In the relaxed, collegial tone of 2 senior officers speaking privately, it referenced upcoming Allied operations in the Mediterranean. It named code names. And it made clear, through context rather than statement, that the primary targets were Sardinia and the Greek coast. Sicily was mentioned as a deliberate Allied misdirection being run against the Germans. Every word calibrated. Every phrase pressure-tested. A letter that could only have been written by a man who felt completely safe. On April 17, 1943, the sealed canister was loaded aboard the British submarine HMS Seraph at Holy Loch in Scotland. Commander Bill Jewell, one of the few men who knew the truth, commanded the vessel. His crew was told they were carrying sensitive meteorological equipment. Below their feet, in the hold, lay Glyndwr Michael. HMS Seraph sailed south, through the Irish Sea, into the Atlantic, down the Portuguese coast, around the Iberian Peninsula. 2 weeks at sea, surfacing only at night. In the early hours of April 30th, 1943, the Seraph surfaced 1 mile off Huelva. Dark water, no lights visible from shore. Jewell brought a small group of trusted crew topside. The canister was opened on the deck. Major William Martin was arranged carefully. Life jacket in position. Briefcase locked to his wrist. Uniform exact. Commander Jewell said a few quiet words. Then the body was lowered into the sea. The submarine went down, and Glyndwr Michael drifted alone toward the Spanish shore in the darkness. A fisherman named José Antonio Rey Maria found him the next morning and reported the discovery to the Spanish Civil Guard. Spanish military authorities conducted a post-mortem. The physician recorded asphyxiation by immersion, consistent with drowning. The briefcase and its contents were logged. British embassy officials in Madrid formally requested the return of all documents without examination. The Spanish agreed. But before the package was returned, a German Abwehr agent in Huelva had already photographed every page. The photographs arrived in Berlin. German intelligence analysts examined the material with systematic thoroughness. Paper stock tested. Typefaces measured against known War Office samples. Signatures checked against files. Military terminology reviewed by officers trained in British staff procedure. The serial number, the rank, the assignment, all cross-referenced against what records were available. Everything held. Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, director of the Abwehr and one of the most experienced intelligence professionals in the German military, reviewed the material personally. He was not a man who trusted easily. He had spent his career detecting deception. He declared the documents authentic. The report moved up to Hitler. Hitler read the letter. He studied the map. Then he moved his forces. German reinforcements flooded into Sardinia. The 1st Panzer Division was transferred to Greece. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, Germany's most feared commander, was personally dispatched to Athens to oversee coastal defense. Naval assets around Sardinia were strengthened. Sicily received nothing. The island's existing garrison remained in place. German High Command had concluded that any Allied movement there would be a feint. In London, Montagu read the decoded intercepts arriving through Bletchley Park. German armour moving east. Supply routes redirected towards Sardinia. Rommel confirmed in Athens by signal intercepts. Then the message came that ended the uncertainty. Decoded German communications confirmed that the Abwehr had accepted the documents as genuine and that the High Command was acting on their contents. The signal passed to Montagu was 3 words: mincemeat swallowed whole. July 9th, 1943. Night. 3,000 ships moved across the Mediterranean, 160,000 soldiers. A violent storm had swept in during the afternoon, waves 15 feet high, landing craft pitching and rolling, naval commanders in emergency discussion about whether to abort. Eisenhower made the call. They would proceed. Below decks, men cleaned weapons they had already cleaned, wrote letters they might not send, sat with their backs against cold steel, and stared at nothing. At 2:45 in the morning on July 10th, Allied paratroopers jumped into the darkness above Sicily. The storm scattered them badly. Some drowned, others landed miles from their targets, alone in enemy territory. The airborne operation was chaos, but the beaches were different. The Hermann Göring Division and the 15th Panzer Grenadier Division were on Sicily and ready to fight. But the armoured mass that should have been waiting at the waterline was in Greece, in Sardinia, waiting for attacks that would never come. On July 11th, the Germans launched their most dangerous counterattack. Hermann Göring Division tanks drove hard for the American beachhead near Gela. Patton's men had barely consolidated. The German armour closed to within striking distance of the water. American artillery fired point blank. Naval guns opened from offshore. The line held, by the smallest margin possible. And then Hitler hesitated. His commanders on the ground were calling for the armoured units sitting idle in Greece and Sardinia. Hitler refused to release them. He still believed the main Allied blow had not yet fallen. The documents had told him so. He waited. Those hours of paralysis at the top of the German command gave the Allies time to land more men, push further inland, and make the beachhead permanent. By the time Hitler reconsidered, it was already over. One body, one briefcase, one dead Welshman floating in the dark off the coast of Spain. He had bought the Allies the time that no tank and no aircraft could have purchased. Sicily fell in 38 days. The campaign ended August 17, 1943, when the last German forces evacuated across the Strait of Messina. Nearly 5,000 Allied soldiers died during the campaign. The suffering was real and the fighting was brutal. But military historians are consistent in their judgment. Without Operation Mincemeat, German defensive strength on Sicily would have been dramatically greater. The casualty figures could have been catastrophic. The invasion itself might have failed. The consequences of Sicily's fall hit the Axis within 2 weeks. On July 25, 1943, 15 days after the first Allied soldiers landed, Italy's Grand Council voted to strip Mussolini of command. He was arrested the same night. The man who had bound Italy to Hitler in June 1940 was finished. On September 8, 1943, Italy surrendered. Germany immediately occupied its former ally, pouring divisions south to hold the Italian peninsula. Those divisions could not fight on the Eastern Front, where the Soviet army, fresh from the catastrophic German defeat at Kursk, was driving west with unstoppable momentum. Germany's southern position never recovered. Operation Mincemeat was officially revealed to the public in 1953 when Ewan Montague published his account, The Man Who Never Was. It became a bestseller. A film followed in 1956. Glyndwr Michael remained anonymous for decades. His grave in the Nuestra Senora Cemetery in Huelva bore only the name Major William Martin. Eventually, after researchers pieced together the full truth, his real name was officially added. His grave marker now reads, Glyndwr Michael served as Major William Martin. For a man who died cold and forgotten in a London winter, it is a staggering epitaph. He never chose any of this. He died alone, with nothing, no family, no money, no record that his life had mattered. And yet his death stopped German armour. It toppled a dictator. It accelerated the end of a war. History is not only made by the men with power and rank and plans. Sometimes it turns on something quieter than all of that. A body in the dark water, a briefcase chained to a dead man's wrist, a lie that travelled from a London office to a Spanish beach to a desk in Berlin to Adolf Hitler himself. And it worked. If the stories that history almost lost, the ones hiding beneath the surface of what we think we know, are why you're here, then stay. There are more of them, and every one of them deserves to be told.